Okay, this demo is to show you how to create mountains and use the terrain editor to manipulate them. So first we'll open up Bryce and camera to director. And the first thing I'm going to do is change the floor here. I'm going to give the floor a texture. I'm going to go to the terrains and I'm going to choose cracked mud. Get some of these other ones here. I'll just go with cracked mud here. Okay, and render that out. You might want to start with a base floor. You could actually use a land surface. Another thing you could use is water to start and then build your landscape around it. There's actually a water section in the terrains there, so you could also start with a water texture, which can look really nice if you want to do like some kind of seascape. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and stay with the cracked mud, create a land structure, and I'm going to create a lake later. So up here is your terrain or your mountain. If you click on that little mountain up there icon, now you have a mountain range here, but notice that you have the straight edge around it. That doesn't look natural at all. So you're going to want to get rid of that edge. Couple ways you can do it. One, you can just bring it down under the ground a little bit. That takes care of it. Okay, however, there's another way I want to show you here also. If you go into the edit button for the mountain, this is your terrain here, and you're looking at it from a top view looking down. Okay, this little flange here will edge up your mountain here. Okay, and you're basically looking at the mountain range from the top, looking down on it. The lighter values are the higher elevations. The darker values are closer to the ground. Okay, and this tool over here is your brush tool. I'm going to just select the default brush. Okay, oops. This is your strength here of your brush. This will take a little getting used to. That's not my default, so let me grab the default's up in the left hand corner there, and it looks like a circle. Okay, and here you can drag the mouse left or right. When you click on it, it'll make the brush bigger or smaller. Okay, again, here you can change your value to dark or light. Okay, and I've dragged it down to the darkest, and what it does is it takes away from the mountain range. Okay, if I drag it up to the lighter area in the white, now I'll add to it. Notice how I'm adding material to the mountain. And you can see it in the window on the right, what it's doing. So your brush tool can add to the mountains or take away. Now I'm going to select the eroded here and drag to the left or right. And you can see how the mountain range changes a little bit by eroding. I'm going to smooth it a little bit. Okay, so you have all these tools in here as well. And now look, your mountain range has changed. It's become a little more natural looking. So you're really going to want to get into the terrain editor, the E button for the mountains, and play around with that. Now you can treat it like any object. You can resize it. You can move it around. Whatever you want to do with it. I'm going to put that off in the distance. Okay, and I'll look for a texture here that stands out from the ground a little bit more. So try a few textures, see what you like. Kind of a purplish, doesn't look really natural though. The goal, what I want you to shoot for is a natural looking landscape. Maybe even almost strive for photorealism, something that looks almost photographic. At first glance, you might believe it's real, that kind of thing, a real picture. Here we go. Some green foliage here to stand out. Okay, so that's a good place to start. I want my mountains to show up. And notice how long it's taking to render because there's so much detail in the floor and the mountain now. So again, the more you add, the more it increases your render time here. So again, I can go into the materials lab Um, I guess right here I'm just going to create another landscape, and this tool here, this slider tool that I'm using, I'm just sliding up from the black portion of the slider up, and then I use the blob maker. The blob maker makes nice round hills really quickly. Then you can erode them or do whatever you want to them. But play around with these tools. There's so many tools here, and I think with limited time I have, I'm not going to go through all of them, but it's something you learn as you work with Bryce more. Okay, and you can make some really nice, just rounded foothills quickly with that blob maker in the edit function. Okay, so start out with a couple of hills back here. Just arrange them off in the distance. And again, resizing them helps. Okay, and there I just copied and pasted the same texture. So I'm creating a little mountain range here. To start off, I like to start with mountains and then get into more details from there. Just make that nice and large. Really make it stand out. Okay, so now it's starting to look like a landscape. The mountains are starting to look believable. So again, you're shooting for a believability, a certain aspect of realism. For this project, I'm not looking for a really science fiction-y landscape. I want it basically to be real. And this slider tool is a huge help in creating the effect. Okay, again, I just took the brush and I darkened the color scheme there to take away from the mountain range a little bit. Okay, again, just reducing it a little more. Add a little bit, bring a little back, and create your own kind of mountainscape there. So again, the goal is to make mountains that look eroded. You don't want too many peaks on them. As it is, when you first put them on the canvas, they tend to look a little too jagged on the top. So try to show some skill with the terrain editor and round out those edges a little bit and try to create believable looking mountains. See what that looks like. Okay, so we got a nice mountain range in the background. That looks pretty good. We've got a little foothill in the foreground. Textures look pretty similar because they're the same, obviously. So maybe what I'll do is try to manipulate this texture a little bit here on this one. Maybe try a different one. See what it looks like. That looks pretty good. Stands out a little more, but it's kind of shiny compared to the others. I don't want anything to jump out too much. I'm trying to create something that looks realistic. So let me try this Highlands. That looks pretty good. Looks good, but it's a little cartoony compared to the rest of it. And notice again, the rendering time is taking much longer with these detailed floors and the terrain, the mountains, and all the texture. Just takes a long time to render. Okay, so here I can go up into the texture editor tools, change some of the colors maybe just to make it stand out. Let's try that and see what it looks like. That's kind of interesting, but again, not very believable. The color doesn't seem natural in the way the landscape's lit. So I'm going to try something else here. No, that's not going to work. Maybe a little darker. It's kind of right back where we started, isn't it? You can work with your diffusion slider too, although, however, I don't think it's going to show up if I bring that in. So okay, so here I'm just duplicating the same mountain range. Now what I'm going to do, so it doesn't look exactly like the others, I'm going to edit it a little more. So you can duplicate mountains if you want, and then go in and into your terrain editor here and use your brush and your darkening tool there, and you can kind of cut into the mountain, make it a little different than it was before. Okay, erode it a little bit, and it looks kind of artificial, so maybe I'll add a little bit more material back to it just to kind of clean it up a little bit and make it look a little more believable. Try one of these fractals here. If you click on one of these fractals, then click on the bubble, you can see it creates gets some weird things happening. However, most of the time it doesn't work for me, but you might find a use for them. That's not going to work. Let's try this dampening tool. Dampening is kind of neat because it flattens out the peak. You can see how the peak is flat there. So maybe I'll go in and manipulate that a little bit. And just kind of erode that a little bit. There we go. Kind of looks like a volcano in the center. Okay, so we'll work with that. Again, resize it. Now you've got a landscape in front of the other one, or a mountainscape. So layering mountains is a good idea, because when you do look out into a region where there are mountains, you're going to see foothills that lead up to them. So layering is everything, I think, in the creation of a landscape in a 3D modeler. Okay, and so again, you want to work with the mountains and you want to work with the terrain editor to create some believable mountains that kind of enhance your project and achieve a sense of photorealism.